Whenever we think about applying edge effects, it's quite easy to go online, do a search for them and find plenty that you can download and use. But it's just a little more satisfying, I think, to create our own. It's quite easy and it's a bit of fun too. Now this is the sort of effect I'm referring to around the edge of my frosty picture. Now we don't usually create the edge effects directly onto our image, as you can see here. We create the edge effect on a blank canvas, either black on white or white on black. Then we use layers to just drop the edge effect over the top of any image and apply it. The first thing we need to consider, I suppose, is what size do we want to make the frame? Well, I don't think it makes a great deal of difference, to be honest. Because of the nature of the artwork we're about to create, it's not too difficult or damaging to increase its size or decrease it to fit any image we're using. But why don't we just start off with an image that's more or less around the same as a 20 megapixel camera, because we can save these as JPEG, so they're not going to take up an awful lot of space. So closing down that previous example, I'm going to go to File, New. In the new document I'm bound to have one. There's one there that I've created before, so I'll just select that and create. Here you can see it's created in white. I'm going to hit the D key to return my color picker to black and white, and Alt backspace to flood my canvas with black. I do need to have my layers out on the right hand side, because any of the work we're going to do on a new blank layer above this black background. So let's create that straight away with the icon just to the left of the bin. What we need to do first is to select a brush, so we need to go to the toolbox on the left hand side and select it. In normal circumstances, and if I was working on a photograph here, I may be saying something like, in 99% of cases the brush we're going to need for our photography is going to be a basic soft edge brush, but here we're going to break that mold and use something different. So once I've selected the brush, we need to go up to the top left and open up the parameters. Once we've done that, we need to pick a brush. Now the brush you pick is going to be potluck. I'm going to suggest that we start perhaps with the dry media brushes down here. They're all in folders, so if you find your dry media brushes, open them up. I can just pick one and see the effect it's going to give me. I do need to make sure I'm painting white, so I need to switch my background and foreground colors. Remember, the X key will do that nicely for us. I'll make my brush a little bit bigger, and I'll use the bracket keys to the right of the letter P. And all we're going to do here, I'm just going to test the water, so to speak. There I can see the effect of the brush. Now creating an edge effect is all personal preference. We're going to just pick a brush. We may use more than one brush. We can have a thick border, a thin border. We can always make a thick border thinner. Not so easy to make a thin border thicker. Let me hit Ctrl Z to undo that last painting, and what I'm going to do here is just click over on the left hand side. I'm going to make my brush a little bigger, I think. I'm going to click just outside the picture surface, move to the right, hold the Shift key, and there you can see I've just painted in one straight line. Now if you want to make the edge more ragged than that, then it's quite easy to do. So what I could do with my artwork here is to zoom in a little bit. Maybe I could select a different brush and I could make the edge rougher than it is if that was my requirements. But if we look over on the right hand side, I'm going to hit Ctrl 0 to fit this back on screen. We can see that the painting that we've done is all contained on one layer. Now if you've seen one or two of my other videos, you may have seen this little trick before. I need to select the Move tool from the toolbox. Now there is a shortcut key for this, and it saves us going way over there to select it. I'm going to touch the V key, because once I've got the Move tool selected, if I hold my Alt key and I click into that shape, you can see I get the cursor change to 2 arrows, and I can click and drag, and what I've just done is made a duplicate layer. So if you look over on the right hand side, you can now see 2 layers, or 3 rather than 2. But of course this ragged edge is upside down, so we need to flip it over. So let's go up to our edit menu at the top left of the screen, choose transform and flip vertical. Now I can drag that down. There's the bottom edge. Holding the Alt key, there's the cursor change, click and drag. Now if I rotate that 90 degrees clockwise, I've got my left hand edge. Let's do that. Edit, transform, rotate 90 clockwise. There's the left edge, and we do exactly the same for the right edge, but now we need to go back, transform, and we need to flip it horizontal. There's a basic edge effect. Now we can add to this and build it up and make derivatives, but for the sake of this video, let me just flatten all of these together because I'd like to show you how we apply it. So I'm going to go to the top right of the layers and choose flatten. Now we can save our artwork as an edge effect. We can save it as a JPEG. We can use quite a low compression, something like 6. It's not going to take up a lot of space on your hard drive, but it's always there should you need it. So let's go and find an image and we'll demonstrate how to apply it. Here you can see the image that I've opened up. I'm going to go to the top left of the screen, drag out my edge effect. Using the move tool I've still got selected, click drag and drop, and I'll tuck that back up at the top in case we need it, and go back to the image. Now straight away we can see that the edge effect we've created isn't quite the same size as the image, but that's no surprise. We didn't create it to be the same size, but we can easily make it fit. We can do that with free transform. Control T is the shortcut, but if we go to edit and choose free transform, I'm going to hit Control 0 to fit the image on screen because that also fits the transform box as well. So what I'm going to do next is to hold the Shift key so I can distort the artwork I've created, the edge effect. So you can see what I'm doing, dragging it back to create the edge effect. Now while we've got this tool in place, this is where we could decide if we want to make the edge effect slimmer. But until we see it with the image, perhaps we can wait and readjust it in a moment or two. So for now we can hit the tick on the options bar at the top of the screen, or we can hit the enter key. Now we can go to the top left of the layers and to the blend modes. Now these have changed in 2019 because now as we mouse over these we get a preview of them. Now the one we're likely to want is lighten. There's the effect I was looking for, but you can see we get slightly different effects with different blend modes, but I'm going to stay with the basics. There is our basic edge effect. It does look a little bit overpowering there, but it wouldn't be a problem, would it? We could hit Control T and we could make it a lot thinner. So let's give that a try, and we can bring the free transform tool into play with Control T. Holding that Shift key I can drag out the right toggle, the left toggle, and you can see how we can affect the edge to be very, very small or quite thick. Hit the tick when we're happy with that, and there we have it. Quite often when we see an edge effect applied to an image, we do see it in white, but it doesn't have to be. Here's another option. If I just turn my image off for a moment, what we can do here is invert this layer. We can turn everything black white and everything white black. Now it's a simple Control I command, but we'll find this in the image menu, and I'm so used to the shortcut I'm going to have to search for this, but there it is. Invert, Control I, and you can see what happens. All we've got to do now is turn our image on and change the blend mode because it's now not appropriate for the colour of the border we've created. So let's have a look at darken. That looks pretty good. Multiply, colour burn, well, they're all having an effect. Let's choose darken, and there we've got a different look entirely to the image using the edge effect we've created. So once we start creating edge effects, it's going to be purely personal. We can pick up just one brush, as I've demonstrated here, and paint right across the top edge, and then just copy it to the other sides. We could make our edge effect entirely unique by painting all four sides manually. We can use one brush on top of another, and if we decide to work in layers with a brush effect on each layer, that gives us creative freedom. And here's another idea. If we go back to our brushes just for a moment, and I'm going to go back up to my options at the top of the screen and to the little cogwheel right at the top right. Here it says get more brushes. I'm going to select that, and I'm taken to the internet. Now, as you can see by the screen that's appeared, I'm being asked to sign in to my Adobe account, so I'm going to do that next. Now, once I've signed in to my account, I've got a whole screen full of options here. One of those is to download a group of brushes called Summer 2018, but if I scroll down, you can see there's quite a number of different brush options here. I'm going to pick just one or two which I think may be quite nice to test. Impressionist sounds pretty good to me, so I'm going to click to download. I'm going to put this on my desktop so it's easy for me to find in a moment. You can see it's called Impressionist. I think I'll also take a look at Splatter. That may be another good one to try. Only takes a few seconds, as you can see, and there's a watercolor here. I'll try that too. Click save. They're all on my desktop. Now I need to go back into Photoshop. Now at the moment I've still got the brush selected that we used to create this effect. So let's go back to the brush options and to the cogwheel at the top right, because we've got an option here that says import brushes. When I do that and I navigate to my desktop, there's the three that I downloaded. We'll take them as they come. I don't think we can select all three. We have to do these one at a time. So we'll take Impressionist and load. I'll go back and take the others straight away. So we'll import brushes. I'll double click this time for speed. And the last set. Now if I tuck my dry brushes away and I scroll down, there's the watercolor, there's the splatter brushes, there's the Impressionist. If we just open up the Impressionist, there we've got a number of brushes we can try. Look at the options we've got just with that one set alone to make edge effects. Now, as you can see by the spinning round of the screen, I've created a new canvas in black and a new blank canvas above that to be able to paint on. So let me go back to my brushes and I'll select something from that Impressionist range. This looks quite ragged. Let's select it. Let's do a quick test. Well, that doesn't look too bad. I'll hit Ctrl Z to undo that. We can make the brush bigger. We could, of course, decide to create the effect manually, a bit like what I'm doing here. Now you can see it's a little bit hit and miss, but sometimes that's what an edge effect actually needs. It needs that irregular shape. Let's try something else, and now you can see exactly what I mean when I say this is a little bit of trial and error and personal choice. Let's go to the splatter brushes, and now we've got a few which we're going to need to test. Let's have a quick look at that. That looks pretty good. Let's hit Ctrl Z to undo that. So let me try giving a little bit of an effect above there. There you can see it's coming through slightly different. We're not getting that solid white, so that's an interesting effect. So you can see exactly how we can create those, and from here it's exactly the same as I did before. Sometimes you only need to create a very small amount of the edge, because using that technique where we can hold the Alt key, click and drag, we could create just a small section, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, and suddenly we've got the top edge done. But the rest of this, you know how that works. Just hold the Alt key, click and drag, then use the transform tools to flip them over and get them into the right position. So there we have another edge effect, which we can safely store as a JPEG by flattening all of those layers together. But we do have another option too. If you wanted to just expand the options that you have, then it's not impossible to drag that background into the bin. Maybe we could select all four of those and right click alongside the layers to merge them. So what we've done is merged our edge effect, but we've retained the transparent background. Because if we save this as a Photoshop file and we wanted to apply it to an image and we didn't want white and we didn't want black, then as long as we lock those transparent pixels and select another color, we can of course have any color into the edge effect that we want. And in some instances this may be quite relevant to do, as long as it's not going to overpower the image we're using the edge effect on. Now, as you can see by the change on screen, I've brought back the edge effect I created a few moments ago, but if you look over on the right hand side, you'll see I've got the black background as normal. I've got the edge effect on that middle layer, but I've created a new blank layer above that, because one of the brushes you may want to try are the wet media brushes. So if I go back and select them, there's the wet media brushes. There's a few in there, and I have just picked up one of those called Classic Cartoonist. But because I'm going to be painting on a new layer, it gives me creative freedom. I want to try to add some lines maybe. So if I click in that position, hold the Shift key and click over here, you can see I could start to experiment, and this is experimental work, to put lines either inside or outside what I'm doing. I can make them odd angles if I want to. You can see the sort of thing that we may want to do. But the beauty of working in layers, of course, is after doing that, if I felt no, it wasn't quite working, well, I can just make a new blank layer and move on with something else. So at the risk of repeating myself, experimentation is the key. Another option, of course, is to drop down the opacity of the brush you're using and or the flow. That can give a different sort of effect, something similar to what you can see at the top left of the artwork I've created here. And because I've got this little bit of artwork created, I've only created a small amount of it. When I hit Control 0, you can see that's all I've got. But of course, with that technique I was describing earlier in other videos, where we pick up the Move tool, hold the Alt key, click and drag, whoops, let's drag that in position, click and drag. Once I get a little way along there, I can select all of those with the Shift click method, right click and choose Merge Layers, go back to my Alt key, click and drag. I'm just speeding up the process here, and from here, well, you know what we do from here. We amalgamate all of those, merge the layers, then we can copy them, flip them left and right. There's another edge effect done. And there's that edge effect. Probably took me no more than 2 minutes to create, applied to an image. I will be providing a number of edge effects, and you're free to use them or adjust them as you see fit. But it's really much more rewarding when you make them yourself.